Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cristian Fustos, and I'm a solution consultant with DS SOLIDWORKS. Thank you so much for joining me today for this webinar. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you could select the raise hand on your GoToWebinar, so I make sure that everybody can hear me. Excellent. So if you guys can hear me, probably can see my screen also. If you can raise your hand, if you can see my screen, please. Perfect. So during this presentation, at any point in time, if you have any particular questions, feel free to type them into the question box, and at the end of the webinar, I will respond to those questions in the order that they were received. So, couple of things, couple of words about myself. I joined from a reseller, and I was a senior data management specialist. And I was providing implementations and data migrations, upgrades, and other data management related items. And before that, I was actually working in production environment like you guys. And I've been using a data management solution since 2006, and I've been using SOLIDWORKS since 1999. So when we're looking at SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard and what is SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard, before I answer that, I would like to ask you and think about how do you currently store your data? And you might have it maybe on your local drive or on the network. And what happens when you start collaborating with other users and somebody opens an assembly, for example? All your components are now locked and nobody can modify them. And how about when you are making a change and you want to revert back to the original model? It's going to be really hard that you have to contact IT and maybe get a backup that it's in place, or even finding the right file in the ocean of files that you have on your network. And how do you know if that particular file is released to manufacturing or for purchasing? So SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard is a data management solution that is included with your SOLIDWORKS Professional and Premium. And this solution actually removes the roadblocks that you're currently facing by enhancing collaboration within departments and users, and stores your data securely and allows you to find it fast. And basically, it's a single source of truth for everybody in the organization. You'll always know who is working on a file and what is the state or status of that as well. And when a user opens the assembly, all the components are copied locally to your local machine, and you don't have to use the network bandwidth that can cause slowness or even data corruption. A little bit about the architecture of SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard. The physical files are actually stored in what we call an archive server, and the metadata, like information about your files, revision, description, material, all that information is stored into a database. And the backbone in the background is SQL Express. So in the next 20 to 25 minutes, I will show you why SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard is a good starting point to take control over your data. And one of the most common misrepresentation is that SOLIDWORKS PDM manages only SOLIDWORKS files. And I will show you how easy it is to manage any file that you have on your local hard drive or on your network. And I will use a very familiar interface, File Explorer or Windows Explorer, to show you how to navigate and read the data. And finding the right file, it's literally a walk in the park. And we're going to take a look to see what needs to be done to have the solution implemented, and a couple of best practices that you should follow once you have it implemented. I will show you how to modify or create a new file, and which basically, since we are using Windows Explorer, makes the users efficient from the get-go with very little time of training. And only users with appropriate credentials can actually access the files, which makes it really secure. And knowing who is working on the file provides transparency. And as I mentioned, not only SOLIDWORKS files, but even Microsoft Office opens the door for interdepartmental communication. So I'm going to switch to SOLIDWORKS actually. And I began my engineering career using Workgroup PDM, which is now a retired product data management. And when I switched jobs, I started working for a company that they didn't have any data management system in place, and files that were stored on the network. And creating a new revision was going to file, pack and go, and add the revision number next to the file name. Is that sounds familiar with anyone on the call? Do you guys manage the files this way today? And in the first week, I opened SOLIDWORKS assemblies to kind of get familiarized with what are they making and what files they have in SOLIDWORKS. And I start making some changes, and I changed materials, and I start removing some components, delete. And without even thinking, I hit the save button. And literally at that point, I looked left, right, and behind me to see if anyone saw me, and I simply just closed my assembly. So how often do you think in your current environment something like this happens on a regular basis? I'm going to switch to Windows Explorer. And you may see that besides my current folder structure, I have some additional icons. And when I select this particular icon, it's asking me to log into the system. So again, provides another layer of security that not anyone that has access to my computer can just access the information in the vault. I'm going to log in as an engineer with my super secret password. And now you see that I haven't left that environment. I'm still in Windows Explorer, and the interface is just enhanced with some columns and some tabs for ease of reading the information that I have available to me. I can simply double click to enter in a folder structure, and I can go to a particular project, and now I can see that I have the number and description and material listed directly into File Explorer. So the users, they don't have to open the file, wait for the file to load to decide that is that the correct file or not. When I'm selecting a SOLIDWORKS assembly, I can preview the file. So I have the option to preview without opening. And in order to preview the file, what's really nice is I don't have to have the application installed on my machine. So I don't have to have SOLIDWORKS installed in order to just preview the file. If I want to create a folder, I can simply right-click and create a new folder. Let's call this folder presentation. And you can see that I have data cards. So data cards is a great place to store information about my files or about my folders. So maybe I have some project information that I want to store and search for it. And when I'm creating the folder, you can see that some information automatically got populated. And I can just take one of my files, right-click and copy. And when I'm placing this file in the folder, you will see that also the data card for the file gets populated as well. So what we are doing here is basically we're removing the manual entries or repetitive manual entries that can cause errors during retyping that information. If I want to, I can just simply double click on the file and open the file in SOLIDWORKS. And now with SOLIDWORKS and PDM Standard, we have a direct integration. So directly from SOLIDWORKS, I can interact with my file. I can actually check it in, or I can send it to an approval process without leaving the SOLIDWORKS interface. So because I just copied this file, what I want to do is I want to make it available for somebody else to see the file. So I will do the check-in operation. And during the check-in, I have an option to type in a comment. and I'm going to type in initial check-in. What this allows me is building the foundation for the history of the file. So maybe 6 months from now, somebody's going to select this file and just look at the comments that the users changing the file put in. So it's going to be much easier to understand the changes and what actually happened with the design of the file. And I have the option to keep it checked out so I can make some changes to it. So instead of alloy steel, let's change the material, and I'm going to make it brass. It's going to be an expensive bearing. And what I want to do, I want to commit this change and make this change available to everyone that is using the system. So I'm going to check it in again, and I'm going to add another comment, change material. So now my file is checked in, it's secure. And what if I'm going to make a hard change? So I can just simply right click and delete this feature, and now the information is basically gone. So using SOLIDWORKS PDM, what I can do is simply right click on a file and just get the latest version, and basically is going to retrieve a fresh copy of that particular file from the server. So you're never going to be able to overwrite existing data. That data is always stored there for the history of the file. Not only that, but I have now a time machine that it literally allows me to go back and see exactly how the component was created, who created the component, and I can retrieve previous versions of the file. So this makes it much easier to basically work with your SOLIDWORKS files and interact with other users. I'm going to switch back to my my file explorer, and I'm going to select this project checklist. And when we're looking at the tabs that we have available, I can select contains, and I can see some files that they are associated with this project. So think about this as your folder, your paper folder or manila folder that you have going around between departments or going between users. Instead of doing that, I can actually create a link between the files in the vault, so everything is going to be under one place. I can see if any of the users is working on a file, or if I want to, I can just simply right click and navigate to that particular location. And when I'm selecting the where used, I have a full overview how that file is used and what projects are affected. If, for example, I have a spec sheet from a vendor, and I'm adding that spec sheet to multiple projects, and then the vendor is saying, hey, I have a problem with a component, very, very quickly you can identify what projects are affected by that particular change. So you can see that basically having PDM standard in place, you can bring departments together. So I just show you how by using Windows Explorer, already a known interface, users can quickly access the information without the need of opening the files. And they can preview the files without even having SOLIDWORKS installed on the machine. Security, it's in place. So again, only users that they have credentials, proper credentials to access the files, they can actually do so. And having ability to manage not only SOLIDWORKS files, but also PDF, images, DWGs, really brings interdepartmental communication together. So think about how much time you can save now, because everybody's going to go to one single source of truth. Easy to find. And would you be able to take a guess what those numbers mean? It was a report put out there saying that the engineers are spending a third of their time on non-value added work. And even worse, 20% of their time is actually spent working on outdated information, which often leads to wasted effort and rework. Having real-time, up-to-date information at your fingertips is critical for the entire organization. And knowing who is working on the files without making a phone call or maybe walking to somebody's desk can really save time and reduces the regular interruptions and makes you more productive. I will show you how, using the power of search, I can get a full overview of any project or file in the system. And having a project or having a report generated, it's as simple as click of a button and I can use that report for maybe workload analysis or even for a downstream process. So while I'm still in the same familiar interface of Windows Explorer, I can access searches. And you can see that I have options to different type of searches. So maybe if I'm a manager, I can use a complete search. Or if I'm just in the manufacturing, on the manufacturing floor, I can use a basic search. So the search cards are highly customizable, and I can tailor what information is presented depending on the user or the group that is using this. So manufacturing will most likely search only by number, name, and description. And again, if I'm a manager or an engineer, I want to have a more robust or more detailed search that I can use. So I can just select this particular tab, and by running the search, I can quickly see who is working on what file. So I can just export this information, and you can see that automatically it's brought into a Excel file, and I can take this information down with me to my next project meeting or next project schedule meeting, and basically have a good conversation with the team saying, okay, I have all these users working on all these files, all these projects. So if you're doing something like this today, how long is it taking you, and what are the steps that or the jumps that they have to go through to put all this information together? What if I want to refine my search and say, okay, well, I want to see if there is any description that is not populated to my files, because the description is important for my my bill of materials. And by running this search, I can see that I found some files, about 1,800 files, that description is not populated. And I can actually narrow down this search by maybe a SOLIDWORKS files only. So I can just type in SLD from the SOLIDWORKS, beginning of the SOLIDWORKS extension, and now the system literally just filters that information down to me. And I can see that majority of the files are basically, or all the files now in this particular case, are actually located in the toolbox. So maybe I want to put some time on the side to for one of my team member to make sure that all this information is populated on the data cards. So when I'm creating a bill of material, the bill of material will fill in correctly. Me as the manager, maybe I want to see if there is any files that they are waiting approval in the system. So I can just simply select waiting for approval and run the search, and I can see that there are a number of files that they are waiting for my approval. So again, using the power of search is extremely easy and extremely quickly you can access your files. So we just looked how easy it is to access the files, how fast it is to generate a report that we can export into an Excel file and use it for a downstream process that can help with our decision making for maybe like a scheduling. And we always knowing who is working on what files. So we are not duplicating the work or even worse, overwriting each other's work, which really helps removing the working in the vacuum and have everybody working as a team together. So now, how do we get it implemented? As I mentioned in the beginning, every seat of SOLIDWORKS Professional or Premium has a seat of SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard included. And when we're looking at the type of license that is required to access, we have three license types. The CAD editor that comes in automatically and provides you with the SOLIDWORKS integration. That is basically for engineers. We have a contributor license that can be purchased separately, and typically that is for managers, for users that they have to create non-SOLIDWORKS files, or they need to change maybe a Word document. And we also have a viewer license that is typically recommended to be used for manufacturing or for purchasing. With SOLIDWORKS, while SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard is included, there is an implementation portion that needs to be considered. And if you do not have any previous experience with SOLIDWORKS PDM implementations, please do contact your reseller. They have expert application engineers that they've done this many times, and they can get you up and running in no time. And just my personal recommendation is to let the experts do what they do best. Additionally, if you have data that is stored on your local network or local drives or network, they can also help with that data migration. If you decide to implement the solution on your own, you will still require to contact your reseller, because there is a process of releasing the license in the system that will allow you to activate the SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard license on a SOLIDWORKS License Manager server. The other consideration that I would like to throw out there is you should consider the time that will take you to implement versus the time that will take somebody that does this on a regular basis. And additionally, the reseller can provide some guidance on implementation based on having implemented to a multitude of companies and sectors, and experience is definitely a key. When we're looking at some best practices, SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard is extremely customizable, so leverage that to your advantage. Having regular backups is extremely important. I cannot stress enough how important it is and how many customers, they realize that something goes wrong and they don't have proper backups in place. Not only to have backups in place, but also making sure that those backups are validated. So the solution that I have on my screen is from SOLIDWORKS Knowledge Base, and that will give you a step-by-step direction on what you need to do to take your backup and make sure that you can restore it into another environment. Testing. Make sure that when you have the solution implemented, you don't just go to your production vault and start making changes, because your users are working diligently and they're live, and you don't want your users to be down because you assigned wrong permissions or wrong checkbox in the incorrect place. Sandbox is extremely easy to create. You can just go to your vault and you can take just the settings without any file that you have inside and put them into a sandbox. So you can validate your changes, making sure that, again, nothing actually breaks. Take advantage of the data cards. We can actually save data cards in specific folders, so we can capture information based on the folder location. So for example, if I have a library folder, maybe I'm interested into a vendor part number description. But if I have a project folder, I want to capture information about customer, maybe project number, project location, and so forth. And when we're applying permissions, it's highly recommended that you will create groups. In your IT environment, they are kind of using the same best practice, because in no time a user will come to you and say, I want the same permissions as Bob has. And instead of going side by side to compare permissions or take screenshots, you will just create a group. Even if there is only one user in that group, is going to make your life much easier and is going to save you so much time for troubleshooting. Take advantage of automation, because you can actually have signatures and revision numbers automatically stamped on the drawing title block automatically. So there is no user interaction, there is no manual entries of that data. In addition to that, when you actually release one of your drawings, SOLIDWORKS drawings in the system, automatically a PDF can be generated so other users can actually consume the data. So with that, we looked how SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard is easy to be used because we're using a Windows Explorer, and users are easily immersed into this interface with very little training. Finding the right information is very quick and easy. We also looked at some what steps we need to take to get the solution implemented, and some best practices that you should follow on that respect. And I will leave you with one simple question. If you go forward with this solution, why not have all of the files, including toolbox, well-known profiles, templates, inside of SOLIDWORKS PDM, so everything is going to be under one single source of truth. So your users, they don't have to wonder or ask themselves, where should I go to get the right information? And with that, I will thank you so much for your time and attention. And we're going to take a look to see if there is any questions from the audience. So I have a question that I would like to address. We have currently a license of SQL Standard from our ERP system. Will PDM Standard, SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard, work with that? SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard is using SQL Express, and even if you do have a separate license for a higher level version of SQL, you're not going to be able to use that license. So you're going to have to use SQL Express. Another question that we have from the audience is, do we still have to manually maintain the revision on the file name? Absolutely not, because SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard is completely integrated with SOLIDWORKS with Windows Explorer. You can just add that information to your data card and have the system automatically manage the revision scheme for you in the background. So the users, they don't have to have any type of control. They don't have to remember to revise the file. The system will do that automatically for them. And one last question, are there any bill of material capabilities? Excellent question. So I'm going to just quickly switch to my environment, and when I'm looking at where used, I can see that this particular component is used in an assembly. I can right-click on the assembly and browse to it. And when I'm selecting the bill of material tab, I can see all of my components that they are associated with this assembly. So again, without the need of opening the file or previewing the file, I can see the complete bill of material. And if I want to, I can open this file into Excel, and I can even send it to maybe like purchasing or manufacturing, so they can take a look to see what items they need to manufacture or order material for. And again, everything is highly customizable. So if you have additional information that you want to bring in, maybe like material or purchased versus manufactured, you can absolutely do so in this environment. So with that, I think we covered everything that we wanted in this particular time frame. And again, if you have any additional questions, feel free to contact your reseller Javelin. And thank you so much for your time and attention. Have a great day.